You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Friday, August 23rd. The 49ers just finished or are just finishing their final preseason game against the Las Vegas Raiders, and it was a doozy there today. A late game. I'm a little delusional at the moment as it's 11 p.m. out here in Colorado, well past my bedtime, but going to be giving you guys a fun post-game show today. And I'm happy to announce my post-game guest of the entire 2024 season, Adam Kezar. You guys might know him as Kezar Pod on Twitter. He's a director of recruiting, former coach at Laney College out there in Oakland. Adam, so excited to have you on this season, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. The preseason's done. Real football is on the way. It's always the biggest relief of the year, right? Okay, Brock Purdy didn't get hurt. None of the big time starters, except for one didn't get hurt. So that's pretty good, but no complaints. I will complain about the time of game though. That was an interesting deal to put a 7 p.m. game on a Friday. I know you're hurting over there in Colorado.
How are the East Coasters doing? I'm hoping the East Coasters are all right because that game started 10 p.m. for them, if I'm not mistaken. So if they stayed up for this one, yeah, some diehards for sure. But let's get to talking about this game, shall we? So first, obviously, the 49ers, Kyle Shanahan generally uses this final preseason game as a dress rehearsal. So most of the starters play, but some of them did not, such as Kyle Juszczyk, Elijah Mitchell, who was still working back from an injury. He returned to practice, but he did not play in this final preseason game. Ricky Pearsall still dealing with an injury. Juwan Jennings was dealing with an oblique injury this week. Logan Thomas was barely re-signed to the team yesterday, so no surprises that he didn't suit up for this one. Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, George Odom, some of the guys that did not play. But we got a good look or a better look at Brock Purdy with more of the starters. So that was, I guess, good. He played 3 series. To me, Adam, he looked a lot sharper in this game. I know, there was some bad plays, but I think for the most part, he looked better than he did last week. Better pocket presence, some mobility that he showed there. So what did you think about Brock Purdy in this one?
Man, kid's a stud. That just for how tall he is, for how big he is, for how normal his arm strength is, like you can't imagine any better of a quarterback, right? Like just the quickness, like a few times rolling out to his right, dropping the arm slot. He had that one run up the middle where he juked one of the linebackers out of their shoes, basically. Like, that's not normal, right? And really what the great separator with Brock Purdy is, to me, is he's the best. He's the most accurate quarterback in the league. We get oohs and ahs out of the arm strength from guys like Mahomes, Jordan Love, right? But what wins games is accuracy, and he is the best at it. I just think that's why he's going to get paid a very, very big chunk of change when his contract's up for renewal.
Yeah, and so I agree with everything you said. I think it kind of deceives defenders how agile Brock Purdy is. And how he's able to juke guys every now and again. So it is kind of nice to see, still surprises people like that. So the first drive ended in a Moody field goal. I think that probably would have gone for a longer drive, but they got behind the sticks after a bad block from Braden Willis. We'll probably talk a little bit more about Braden Willis here in a bit because it wasn't his best game. But this Purdy's second drive ended in a Jordan Mason touchdown. He finished with 42 yards on 8 carries, averaged 5.3 yards a carry. And that drive had some nice blocks from Dominic Pooney as well. So, man, I mean, we've said enough about Pooney like throughout the last couple weeks, training camp, all that. He looks great. He's a starting right guard, unquestioned. But Jordan Mason, like, do you feel like he has this RB2 spot, kind of on lock, or is there still some chance that Elijah Mitchell has that just because he has the pass blocking down?
Just off the jump, I think Kyle's going to give him the RB2 slot just because of his availability, right? Best ability is availability. I love Jordan Mason. I loved him since he, first got to the 49ers. I thought he provided a great change of pace, the physicality, downhill runner, what they call in the SEC a war daddy type running back who's going to get the extra chunk of change, right? He's going to be physical. And that would be the dream, right? You have CMC, gashing, up the middle. Obviously no knock on CMC. He's obviously very physical too, but Jordan Mason, I think, is just another level of physicality. I think the big question from last year was the hands, right? In Kyle's offense, you have to be multiple, you have to be reliable, right? I think that's one thing people constantly overlook about the 49ers is think about the reliability of how they execute, right? I think there's something like, fewest drops in the league as a team last year, something of that, at least in the top 5-3, so to speak. They were elite. Ayuk being at the top of that tier, like you just never saw him drop a ball, and you never saw CMC drop a football, right? So if you're going to play in that offense, and you're going to play significant snaps, you have to be reliable with your hands. And Jordan Mason, from what I know, he bought the jug machine and he's improved on that. So I'm hoping the job's his.
Yeah, he's getting the return on his investment for sure. He had that one ball that was very close to the sideline. Like he would have had 2 feet in, but he didn't quite secure it. But that was a tough ball anyway. So I don't really fault him too much for that one. And I thought it was a great ball from Purdy, just that it was kind of on the outside as well. So speaking of Purdy, though, his third drive ended in a pick 6 after the ball was deflected by a defender. Really tight coverage there, targeting Debo. And as a lot of people mentioned, live tweeting the game, it was thrown high for Debo as well. What did you make of that play? I mean, obviously, maybe not the best decision from Brock Purdy on that one. And not just that, dude tried to tackle the guy that got the interception, which scared me quite a bit.
Oh, goodness. Oh.
Don't do that again, Purdy, please.
I had no words, no notes. When I saw Purdy dive and roll up on his shoulder, I might have needed to step outside. So, what really happened on that play, you got a classic double slants concept on the right-hand side, which is probably one of the most common route concepts in all of football, day one install type stuff. And the classic thing to do is to throw to the second window, right? That's the safer option, less traffic out there, a little bit more predictable. It's a little bit more predictable to throw. The thing that I think Brock probably should have accounted for, and he definitely should have accounted for, is as far as the replay shows, the corner had inside leverage, right? When that corner has inside leverage, he's going to be all over anything quick and inside. He's playing tighten up to the chest. So I probably would have not gone that way myself if I'm seeing inside leverage on the outside. And really, people are kind of bagging on Debo for like the lack of separation. Listen, I understand that. Like I've seen the film. The guy at times has trouble with it, right? Like, let's just be honest. He's a phenomenal player, but he has trouble. But I also think it is a symptom of something I have felt personally the Niners lack it through the air, and that's size outside of George Kittle, right? You got Jawan Jennings, right? But outside of that, Brandon Ayuk is not a big player. He's not a lengthy player. Debo's not a lengthy player. Now, they're great players. I understand that. But there's something to be said for a quarterback to have a guy on the outside who can just go get a jump ball, right? A TO type player. a DK Metcalf. Like those guys are worth their weight in gold because you could throw it up and you could be sure that at the worst, an incompletion, right? But you throw it up when, to Debo. Now he had that play earlier in the game, right? He threw it up and he got it. Against the corner is probably not going to be starting, right? But you saw it in the Super Bowl, right? There's some deep passes there to Debo where he's not coming down with the ball. And I really just think it's because of the size thing there. So, yeah, I think, number one, Brock probably should have forced it to the second window there, seeing that the corner has inside leverage. And number two, just a great play by the DB, right? He's pasty, he's in the right place at the right time, got hands on Debo, right, too, right as he gets out of his break. That kind of makes the play happen as well. So credit where credit's due, tip of the cap of the Raiders defense. But yeah, Brock, please never, ever, 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 ever do that again in a preseason game. Otherwise, I'm going to have a heart attack straight up.
Like, I get he wants to be the hero. He threw the interception. You feel bad. You want to make it right. But, oh, my God, never again. And I did make a joke. I did make a joke that, Brandon Ayuk was probably on the sideline, keeping some giggles to himself because the wide receivers couldn't quite separate. I think
so
that
true.
helped
It's
Brandon
so true.
Ayuk's case a little bit. But, I digress on that. I do think the 49ers and Brandon Ayuk will get something done eventually. But let's talk about the first unit defense. They forced a quick 3-and-out to start. I thought they looked pretty good. Like one of the first plays, Dylan Lobb, who I loved, by the way, coming out of this draft class. He got swallowed up on a run play for a gain of just 1. And that was Malik Collins. Lenore snuffed that one out. I also saw a lot of positive plays from Devondre Campbell in this one. He definitely stood out to me. So what did you see out of him or any of the guys in the first team defense?
Well, as a former linebacker coach, I love to look at linebacker
Yeah,
play.
let's hear it.
He's faster than I thought. That's the biggest surprise, and maybe that's the biggest game changer here. Is he's a little quicker, a little more agile, got a little more twitch than I previously thought, and that was my one knock on him. He obviously knows how to play the position. He's reliable at the position. I think that's a big thing on defense. It gets constantly overlooked. Are you reliable? Alignment, assignment, adjustment. Are you across the board gonna get are you gonna do your job, as Bill Belichick would say? And he's proven that, right? So that's security. That's added comfort. Dare I say the linebacking room is not looking that bad.
No, not at all. They got tough decisions to make.
Oh yeah. And I'll tell you what, after the Super Bowl, I was obviously in tears and in pain, but thinking ahead is Dre's out.
Right.
I hate the depth right now. I absolutely despise it. So yeah, loved what I saw from him. As far as the whole defense goes, this may be the best secondary the Niners. This is a big claim, right? Maybe that I've seen in my lifetime.
In your lifetime?
I think so. If you look back at it, you got 2 Pro Bowl corners. Yeah. Demo and Ward, forget about it. Those are dudes at corner, right? There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Those guys are going to lock it down. They're going to be the best corner, either one of them, on a lot of teams in the NFL. Majority of teams, right? But the safeties have the potential to be so good. Jair Brown, you see him punch the ball out, just has a knack for making plays, being physical, being in the right place at the right time. There's something to be said for that, right? He proved that last year. Malik Mustafa, I love this kid out of college. We all did. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I saw something y'all didn't, right? But there was a lot of hype behind him, and I thought it was warranted. At Laney College, we didn't mind our safeties being a little shorter, but what you had to do was get in there and fill in the run game, in the box. You had to have he has closing speed, and not just closing speed, but dynamic closing speed, right? There's a difference on defense because everybody's fast at that. Let's just be honest. Everybody's fast at that level. but can you move in space? Can you take the air out, so to speak, from point A, being yourself, to point B, the ball carrier, and do so in a way that doesn't give up leverage, you don't go flying one way, he jump cuts the other way, right? And you just look silly. I just think Malik Mustafa, as long as he can do it between the ears, so to speak, if he can be reliable in coverage, because that is a thing, right? You can be so good in the run, but if you're giving up over the top too often, forget it. Your career's going to be really short-lived in the NFL. So love the path. To summarize, love the secondary, excited what we have in the LB room. Pass rush is going to be there. I am scared beyond belief for the run defense. Well, not beyond belief, but I'm a little worried. We'll put it this way.
There was also a bit of a injury scare for the defensive line. Both Leonard Floyd and Yetur Gross-Matos exited the game. It was like almost back-to-back plays, or was back-to-back plays, that those guys went out. And it looked pretty bad for a second. But both of those guys, even though they did not return, they were on the sideline. Leonard Floyd was seen smiling with Kyle Shanahan. So I think they averted disaster, thankfully. I guess we'll wait on Gross-Matos, but at least Floyd, it looked positive after that. So, and Floyd looked good when he was there. He had a sack. He's just so fast coming off the edge. I think him and Bosa this season are going to be a joy to watch. And I think they're going to complement each other really well. So I'm excited for that. I do think, for some reason, like, the second team defense just kind of lackluster, like the pressure. I wasn't seeing a whole lot of pressure, but I know they're not doing like a whole lot of fancy stuff in the preseason, to generate pressure. So I'll leave that. But like some of the third string guys, like Evan Anderson, for example, he flashes to me. And Alex Barrett, which I think Alex Barrett got some snaps earlier in the game this week. He had a great game last week as well. Those are some guys that have flashed. I think Robert Beal, has some good pursuit as well. So there's guys here and there that I think we could be excited about. And I guess I'm just curious how that's gonna look in the regular season. So some of those guys we probably won't see as much, but I figure they're going to rotate a lot of those guys in. So we'll see what those guys look like. But as far as the secondary goes, I am pumped about the secondary. Obviously Jair Brown looks great. He forced a fumble in this game. He actually played quite a bit in this one, and I was like, I've seen enough of Jair Brown. Get him out of there. But he was fine. Mustafa, yes, he's fast. I think he plays very instinctual, but sometimes I think he over pursuits a little bit, and so he's gonna learn though. I think he'll learn to get to the right spots. But to just have that ability to play on your instincts, I think is a great sign, because not a lot of people have that. I think that's what allows him to play so fast, like he does. And it kind of reminds me of Hufanga a little bit when he first came into the league, right? And he just kind of had to polish, I guess, the film study, or just, you're not doing film study in preseason, but, just the play recognition, things like that. So I think he'll improve. Now, Adam, let me ask you about the QB2 competition, because it's heated up, I think. Brandon Allen was the first quarterback to go in after Brock Purdy today. I don't know if that gives us any clue as to who Kyle Shanahan is preferring in this. I don't know. But he went first. My opinion, Brandon Allen has been kind of lackluster. Like he'll make the throws. He'll make some throws, right? And it's like he does his job. Fine. But like Dobbs, I think he's just so fun to watch, and I think he does his job too. But I mean, you see that he has this upside of being able to extend plays when things, fall apart. He can will himself and the offense to move the ball, get a first down, get a touchdown, right? Like those are the things I see out of Dobbs, and he's just an exciting player. So I thought he looked better tonight, Dobbs did, and he threw a touchdown to Jacob Cowing, who also looks great, and I want to talk about him too. But Dobbs, what do you make of him and this QB2 competition? Like, do you have a preference here?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. For me, it's so true, right? There's throws you see Allen make and you go, wow, like this could be, a guy who could see some playing time in the National Football League. But for me, where he kind of turns back into a pumpkin, like just no offense, is when the pocket collapses, right? Or when he has to improvise, where he's knocked off his spot, where he has to move. It seems a little deer in headlights to me, right? Like what that first sack he took, he backed up into a D lineman. He's one of those guys where Brock Purdy always keeps his eyes downfield and has ultimate feel in the pocket. Allen just does not have that at this moment to me. I think like as soon as things get a little chaotic, the eyes kind of go to what's immediately around him, and there's a little panic there. But he's got a phenomenal arm. He could rip it clearly. So that's where the upside is there. In terms of Dobbs, listen, it's as simple as this. This guy has a resume of putting winning performances together in the National Football League, and Allen does not. We saw it firsthand last year when he came to town and really gave it to the Niners defense for a lot of that game, right? Or at least the first half, right? You saw the flash. He was leading the Cardinals up and down the field. And so, Allen doesn't have that on his resume. So I'm going to go, I would err with the proven and also the guy that's just more dynamic. I mean, that zip down the middle to Cowing, that was an incredible throw. He ripped it, no hesitation. And I just haven't seen Allen do that. So my bid is with the Pastronaut. That's for sure.
The Pastronaut. I 100% agree with that, and I'm hoping Kyle Shanahan does too. But let's talk about Jacob Cowing, right? I mean, he had a great preseason debut, NFL debut last week, right? This week we see more of the same. Right? He looks great. He looks very comfortable and confident. We see him on returns, and he looks very comfortable there, which to me is a big deal because, in my opinion, Cowing looking great, that makes Trent Taylor obsolete, right? And you saw Trent Taylor playing at the very end of this game. I don't think he's making this roster. And I think that's a direct result of Jacob Cowing coming onto the scene after coming back from his injury and looking as good as he has. And yeah, he looks the part. I think this is going to be a year one contributor for Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, I mean, with Debo's injury history, I think he's going to get some snaps at some point. I hate to say it, hopefully not, knock on wood, but if the last few years are any indication, Debo's going to miss some time at some point, right? I wonder if they can use him a little bit in the Debo role. Like when Debo first got to the Niners, I mean, he was known for the physicality, right? Right off the bat. That's not so much Cowing's game. But they can, they can send him on an end around, right? They can kind of place him in certain, with the exception of running back. I don't think he could do that like Debo can, but I don't think he needs to with how many running backs the Niners have. But yeah, any kind of wide receiver depth right now is so crucial for the Niners, especially with Ayuk, the Ayuk thing being up in the air. The Pearsall thing, don't even get me started. Like, I mean, I will fully take, listen, I loved the pick when they made the pick. I was a huge fan of his coming out at college. He's a dog. No question for me on his ability, but he's one of those players. And coaching, you see these type of players who do not know how to go anything less than 110%, no matter what they're doing. It's almost like, this is a wild way to phrase it, but like in their mind, they're going faster than their body can handle. You know what I'm saying? Like they just don't know how to go anything less than all out. And I think like even the really good players know how to, for lack of a better term, like pace themselves, right? You don't have to go 100% all the time, right? Like you just don't. But he does, and those players tend to be a little more banged up because they don't want to leave nothing on the field, which I respect wholeheartedly. I respect that, but unfortunately, that shoulder thing's a bummer, and I really was looking forward to. I know you were looking forward to it. We all were looking forward to watching him in the preseason. So, it'll be interesting to see how everything shakes out on the wide receiver front going forward.
Yeah, and for more context, for those of you that aren't chronically online, like some of us, I think what's being referred to is the Mike Silver article, or no, he was on KNBR. Mike Silver, B reporter for the 49ers NFL Insider, said that the 49ers knew that Ricky Pearsall had this shoulder injury before the draft. They thought it'd be fine. Lo and behold, obviously today he's re-aggravated it. He's still dealing with it. So not ideal, but at least we have Jacob Cowing, who looks great. Looks like he could be a contributor right away as well. And the 49ers have Isaac Guerendo, who also looks like he can be a contributor right away. And similar to Jacob Cowing, who made his debut last week after missing most of camp with his injury, Guerendo also missed most of camp with his hamstring injury. And I was actually impressed by how explosive he looked already. Like I was thinking, oh, he's coming back from injury. It might take him some time. No, like dude looks like he shot out of a cannon, and he had that huge return in this game, 81 yards. No, sorry, not 81 yards. He had 85 yards for Guerendo. And that's in his first game, doing kickoffs, right? And this is what we see. That's, I think, just a glimpse of what he is. And that's exactly, I think, why Kyle Shanahan drafted him in the first place, because he has that speed. And I'm excited for what Kyle could do with him as well, because I think, you're going to want to get him on the field with that kind of speed.
Definitely. I mean, obviously they love him. They traded up to get him, right? Like, obviously there's
done that before.
Yeah, we have.
Hasn't always worked out.
Yeah. I think you really touched on something so important. To look like that coming off any kind of injury. Even if you're out 2 weeks, right? Even if you're out for a week, like to come out and look like you're going all cylinders. Maybe that's a product of, listen, they did trade up for him, but that RB room, that running back room is stacked. And he's trying to make a case to get any kind of playing time this year, right? To increase the resume, to increase the paycheck, right? So I don't think, maybe he wasn't 100%, but it was one of those, like, if I don't go all out now, if I don't show something now, I might get buried under. I might get lost in translation, right? So I was impressed. I think like he's definitely got breakaway speed. I have to go and watch. I'm curious to watch the film a little bit, because I felt there were some times on some wide zones where there was a lane to be had, and he didn't quite hit it. Whereas I think Mason would have hit that lane, right? And I think that's the big like you have to have great vision to be a good back in this offense, because that's what zone scheme is all about, right? It's fine, it's going with the wall, finding the lane, cut back in the lane, boom, and hit it right then and there, no hesitation. So if Kyle's flipping on the film and he's seeing, wow, he's got all the speed, but hey, my patchwork offensive line, shall we say, created a big hole for this guy and he's not hitting it. It's not boding well. At the very least, maybe a difference maker on the kickoff return. And my goodness, are we in for something else with this kickoff coming this year? So one thing, if you'll,
coverage is terrible for the 49ers again.
Yeah. And if there's one thing you'll indulge me on, we had reports as a coaching staff that were passed on to us from Division I coaches. One of the reports that we would show to our special teams unit every year is the percentage, the chance of scoring based on where the opposing team starts their field position. And I don't specifically remember the percentages, but if they were starting from the 20 or less, it was something like less than 10% they were going to score on that drive. If it was 30-yard line or more, we're talking like 35% range, 40%, like significant increase. So my prediction, which shouldn't be so bold, I wouldn't say is really bold, but we could see a huge jump in scoring this year. And we could see games that would normally not ever be decided by the kickoff being decided by a kickoff because they have a dude who can return, who can take the football from one end zone to the other and score. So I'm just so excited to see what happens with that. I'm a little afraid because I feel like you can feel less comfortable. Even if you have a lead at the end of the game, can't just squib kick it, right? You can't just pooch it, so to speak. You gotta win honestly on that front, I guess. So excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, and I stand corrected. It was 93 yards punt return for Isaac Rendo. So yeah, looking forward to him. Looking forward to the new kick return rule. I think the rule makes the game fun and makes returns fun. But like I said, I think the 49ers need some work on their coverage unit yet again. Hopefully it's just the preseason. We could just chalk it up to that. We're getting some updates from the pressers, the post-game pressers from Kyle Shanahan. Both Leonard Floyd and Yetur Gross-Matos sustained knee sprains, and both are scheduled for MRIs. So that sounds bad. That's pretty bad, right? Okay. So we'll have to wait and see what the prognosis on those MRIs are. Hey, do you want some kind of good news though? I mean, the good news is that Ricky Pearsall sublexed his shoulder and it was tender yet normal. 49ers hoping to get him back into practice next week, which would obviously put him on track to potentially be available for week 1. So there's that. But yeah, obviously we're going to be holding our breath for Leonard Floyd and Yetur Gross-Matos because, like I said, I think the backup situation, I think, for the defensive line to me is like, I don't really know. It might take some time for those guys to to really get going. I just haven't seen much to feel too confident about with those guys quite yet. But yeah, I mean, I thought this was a pretty solid final preseason game. Apparently, it was a wild one. I don't know if you got to see the final play, Adam, but apparently it was a Hail Mary by Tanner Mordecai. I saw a small bit of it that they were just throwing the ball everywhere. And I guess we almost had a big guy offensive lineman touchdown. And the game ended in a tie, which is hilarious.
Oh, perfect. Oh, perfect.
Hilarious.
That's just swell. That is great, though. That is. Listen, the preseason stinks. We're just waiting for the regular season, but the least they could do is make it entertaining. And by golly, they did that. They accomplished that in spades tonight.
They totally did that. It made it worth us staying up so late for it. But as we said, yeah, it is pretty late. Even on the West Coast, it's getting pretty late. East Coasters, you guys have been with us in the chat, a couple of you, so really appreciate it. Make sure you guys like this video if you haven't yet. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Leave a rating, leave a review if you're an audio listener. And, like I said, I'm going to be dropping my in-season schedule on Monday, so make sure you guys tune in to see the full slate. Already announced Adam. It's going to be my post-game guest, so really excited for that. But for now, for me, from Adam, have a good rest of your night, folks. Sweet dreams. Peace.